Hey, what's up? This is Mark at Alchemist.camp, where we learn Elixir and Phoenix by building things. Today is the first episode of a new series on Phoenix LiveView. If you're not familiar with LiveView yet, or if you haven't heard of it, it's a bit like the Opal library was for Ruby, or like sort of like Meteor.js was back in its early days in 2013. Basically, you can write all of your logic, front end and back end, in the same place, in the same language. So in this case, we'd be writing everything in Elixir, and Phoenix already has sockets as a part of its library, both Elixir and JavaScript side, and you can basically communicate with the front end via sockets and react to what's going on the front end and do whatever processing you need to on the server and get back to it. In the case of something like, say, form validation, this is a pretty clear win. It's super fast to write compared to doing this in JavaScript, and it's also very efficient. You're not doing whole page loads. You're not even doing JSON requests. You're just communicating over a socket that's already open. In the case of games, which I've seen quite a few people do, maybe you shouldn't be doing all of the processing on the server, or you should have, each individual client using its CPU to do whatever calculations necessary. But maybe you've got a huge multiplayer game and the core logic has to be done on the server. So in any case, it's interesting to see what the limits are. It's definitely useful for a broad class of apps that people would otherwise have to reach for a JavaScript framework to handle. So LiveView project was the #1 voted one when I accepted it. Since then, Absinthe and GraphQL has also been voted to the top. I've accepted it. I'm going to do that one after LiveView. Because LiveView is changing pretty quickly, I've decided to do two separate projects. This first project is going to be a site for a podcast. And that podcast is a real podcast that I'm starting with a podcaster I've been following for a while, and we're going to call it Reactor. So I'll assume that you've already got Phoenix installers set up. You've already got Elixir and Erlang and JavaScript installed on your machine. If you don't, go to alchemist.camp/episodes and scroll down to ASDF, the version package manager for all your languages. This episode, you can see the URL here, asdf-language-versions. This will cover everything you need to get set up, and then come back here, and we'll start by using our Phoenix generator to make a new project. Mix phoenix.new reactor. And we'll install all the dependencies. In fact, while these dependencies are installing, we'll just get started because we've got the basic app that we need. First, we'll go to mix.exs. We're going to add one more dependency. This is LiveView itself. So that's Phoenix_live_view. And as of the time of this recording, it would be version 0.4.0. If you want to follow along and not have to deal with any minor issues from differences in versions, I highly recommend using the exact same version. Then once we've installed that, we're still installing dependencies, we're going to have to do another mixsteps.get. But in the meantime, we'll go to the router and add a flash plug here. So fetch flash is, say, when there's an error or something, the next page you load, you would display the error in a flash, like one of those red things, like, your password must contain at least 8 characters or something like that. But if we're using LiveView, we also need to have a flash for when it's not a full page reload and it's just a reload of part of the page coming in from a socket. So we'll include phoenix.liveview.flash right there. And this is a little bit premature, but we're going to make a new route in a moment, and we'll call that route foo. This is just going to be a throwaway route where we set everything up and test things out. So we'll say this is going to use foo live, which is a module that we haven't created yet. Then we'll go to web.ex. This is the primary module that pulls in all of the macros and everything from Phoenix. And for example, if we were to look in our controllers, you can see the page controller has a use reactor web controller here. What that does is it pulls in all the macros from here. So this quote do, this end, all of this is basically pulled in to every single controller where you have that use macro. So every single one of those controllers calls another macro that gets everything from Phoenix controller that goes into every single controller, and then imports plug.con, imports get tax for internationalization, and sets up an alias. We're going to add one more import here, and this import is going to be import phoenix.liveview.controller. So we'll also pull in all of the things that LiveView controllers need into our controllers. Then in View, we're going to import a few more things as well. Import phoenix.liveview. And so this will get imported into every single view in our app. We're only going to get certain functions. Actually, let's set it up like that. And those will be live render. There's a 2-argument version. There's also a 3-argument version that we want. And we'll get live link, which has a 1-argument version and a 2-argument version we want. Then we'll also get live component, 2-argument version, 3-argument version, and a 4-argument version. So like so. I'll save that, make sure the syntax is right. Okay. Then down a bit further in the router, we're going to import phoenix.liveview.router. So this router file we were just looking at the top, it says use reactor web router. That's the same thing as if we had pasted in these 4 lines here. And of course, this one is another macro that's pulling in a bunch of things from phoenix.router. That's it for our web.ex. Next, we'll go to config. And we need to add one thing to, that's the wrong config. Config, so it should be not in the depths, just config.exs right in the config directory at the top level. We're going to add a config for LiveView, and that's the signing salt. And usually you need a signing salt anytime you have a channel or anything that uses a channel, which includes LiveView. So our signing salt is going to be, it will run mixdepths.get first because we added the LiveView dependency. Now we'll mix phoenix.gen.secret and pass it 32. This is what the LiveView docs say to do. It's basically just specifying the length of the secret. Not sure why it recompiled there, but we do have our secret here. This is what it would normally look like if you generate a secret. And of course, these are all pseudo-random, so it doesn't matter which one we use. Pass this into our config.exs. There's one other weird thing I've noticed. So this is just related to the reloader. Doesn't matter at all for our app, but I've found that LiveView reloads, actually sometimes it doesn't reload. I'm not sure why, but if we do this and separately get views and LiveView, maybe there's something about the curly brace syntax to put 2 in the same line that it's not working with the version of Elixir I have on my machine. But if you run into any issues with reloading, just do what I've done here and it'll take care of that. Next, we need to get the front end stuff. So we'll go to package.json, which is in the assets directory. And this shouldn't be much of a surprise. We're adding a library called Phoenix LiveView. So obviously, since LiveView is something that works as a bridge between the back end and the front end, it's got to have a JavaScript component. That JavaScript component can be pulled in from the Elixir deps that we just got. So dep/Phoenix LiveView. What that's doing is, you see, we're at the assets directory, which is in the top level of the app. If you go up one level, that's the very top level, then there's a deps directory, and inside of deps we've got every single dependency we've installed, including Phoenix and including Phoenix LiveView. And this directory has a package.json in it and a bunch of JavaScript as well. So we're just grabbing that from the local file system. First we pull in the dependency in Elixir, but that directory includes JavaScript in it, which we can get in our package.json. I'll go to my other tab here. I like to have two open. That way I can have a terminal in the main directory and then another one in assets. In assets, we have all of our JavaScript stuff. You can do npm install here. I use yarn, so just run yarn. That'll install all the JavaScript stuff that we need. While that's going, I'm going to open up app.js, and oh shoot, we actually need to get something from CSS as well. So in our app.css, we're going to import, let's see, we're two directories down here, so we'll get ///deps in that same LiveView directory where we were, Phoenix LiveView, assets, CSS. Wow, this is easy. Just tab complete everything. I like it. So that's in our app.css. Then in our app.js, we've got our CSS there. We need to import some more JavaScript. So we'll import socket from Phoenix. And this is the JavaScript portion of Phoenix's sockets. And then we're going to import LiveSocket, which is what LiveView uses in order to use Phoenix sockets to bridge the front end and the back end. As I was explaining, Phoenix_live_view. It looks like everything we need. I think I've got my editor set to add those semicolons. Then we need a couple more things. We'll say let LiveSocket equal new live socket. Live is what we'll call the socket, and then pass it socket from Phoenix.js. Then we've got to connect it as well. Live socket.connect. That should make sure that everything in our live socket, that should make sure that our live view actually connects and can mount. All right, so let's look back in a router. What did I call that test? I called it foo. So we need a foo live file. Before we do that, let's comment that out, and then let's start up our app. So IEX, I like to always run it through IEX -s mix phoenix.server. So that runs the Phoenix server, but we've also got a REPL here so we can inspect it and do stuff. So it should be running on localhost 4000. Looks like it is. We have the title reactor there, and this is just the default page. So all is good. Our app is working. Now we'll add this live route. That should be broken if we try to hit it because that file doesn't exist. Yep, no route found. So this app has a channels directory, controllers, templates, views. It's a little bit undecided where everybody puts their stuff in LiveView apps. I'm just going to make a new directory at the top level called live, or directory, not a file. So live, and then inside here, we'll call this file foo live.ex. Had a minor issue with VS Code's autocomplete not acting properly, so I restarted it. Autocomplete's working, but all the tabs are gone. Hopefully that doesn't really matter. I'm gonna make a new module, and this is going to be called reactorweb.fooLive, since that's what we're pulling in from the router. And we'll use phoenix.LiveView to get everything from LiveView necessary for this module to work as we want it to. Then the two main things we need are a mount function, just kind of the entry point, then a render function, which is just like the render in normal Phoenix views. It'll just determine what's there. And just like with normal Phoenix views, you could also break the render out into its own template. But for now, we're going to do everything in here. We'll start with a mount. The mount takes a session, which we're not going to use now, but it'll be very useful later on in the app once we have user auth. And inside of the mount, for now, we're just going to have it return OK and the socket, not changing anything, just passing it along. Then in the render function, we take assigns and we'll make a live template here. This is just like how we can make EEX templates, just now it's a capital L and it's a live template. And for now, we're not going to have anything dynamic in it. We'll just say hi, and that's it. Save that, and let's try reloading our page. We'll take an actual reload because we had an error there. fooLive.render is undefined or private. And it looks like we got exactly what we wanted. Let's make sure the autocomplete is working there properly. Save that, it updates. Okay, so this so far is nothing more than what we would do with any kind of template. Now let's make it a little bit more interesting. We'll go up to our mount function, and instead of just passing the socket, we'll assign something to it. We'll say okay, and assign basically a variable in here, socket, and we'll call the variable key and give it a value of none. And save that. In fact, wait a second here, that should have been parentheses, okay, and none. We don't need to double that okay. Okay, and so that changes nothing. However, what we can do in here is we can say, just like we would with another template, we'll do equals socket.assigns.key. And we should see a none pop up there. Socket dot. Oh, right, because we're just getting assigns in there instead of the whole socket. So assigns.key, we see hello, and we see none. And we don't actually type this in templates very much. There's a shorthand. We can just say @key, and we'll get the same thing there, as you can see. Now, let's hook this up to something that actually is dynamic. We're going to make a handle event function, and this should be super familiar to you if you've ever done something similar in JavaScript. Handle event and key down. And what we'll do with that event is we'll take the key, which was matched in the key down event, pull that into a variable called key, and we'll get the socket, and then inside the function we'll say no reply. This is because we're not expecting any reply from the socket. Then the new state is going to be assign socket. This is the socket that was passed into handle event, and the new value of key is going to be this key that was passed in. So we'll save that. So now all we need to do is hook something up to listen for this event of key down. And key down is just a normal browser event. So we'll make a new div and say phoenix-keydown equals keydown, which is the name of the event, Phoenix-target, you can tell it what area of the window is the target. In this case, it's the entire window. And then close the div. And actually, it doesn't really matter if this key is inside or not. I'll just put it inside. So now, anytime there's a key down event anywhere on the window, this key down event will get handled. We'll get which key it was, and then we'll assign that key into the location of key in the socket. In fact, maybe we've got too many keys here. This is a little bit unclear what's going on here, so we're going to call that message, and we'll call this message as well. And this is not responding. Let's take a look in the dev tools. For live socket from Phoenix LiveView, let live socket already declared. Okay, so I just made a typo. So go to app.js. This live socket should be lowercase. So live socket is the library that's been imported, then lowercase live socket is our instance of it that we're connecting to. That's progress, but can't connect to the socket. Let's see here. No route, I believe I saw. No route error found for get live/WebSocket. Let's go to endpoint.ex. Okay, we're just missing one thing. So we've got our main socket. We also need to have one that's named live, since that's what we're trying to connect to. And that socket has to come from phoenix.liveview.socket. That should be the last thing that was missing. Let's just reload the app once, since we changed something in endpoint.ex. And that looks better. Let's try keyboard input. I'll hit J. It says J, K, L. All right, excellent. Shift, caps lock. I guess I can't hit backspace because the browser captures that one. All right, as you can see, there were a few things involved in setting up LiveView, since it spans from the back end to the front end of the app. And there are a number of dependencies and configuration settings and so forth. But once it's set up, it really doesn't take much to get some interactive behavior. And we were able to do it all in Elixir, which doesn't matter for this example, but if you have something more complex, pattern matching is pretty nice. Immutability eliminates a lot of errors. It might feel a little bit like writing Elm if your server were also written in Elm. We're going to throw away this module, and then we're going to make the actual podcast site now that we know everything is set up and working properly. I'm going to put a link to the LiveView docs, as well as write up all of the code that I entered to get everything set up here. And I'll see you next episode.